And welcome to Whiskey Politics. I'm Dave Sussman, your host and purveyor at whiskeypolitics.net. And you can find us at America's Voice News. And we are on 6 p.m. East Coast time daily. And of course, you can find us at YouTube as well. And all of your podcast applications, including the Ricochet Audio Network. So we are talking a lot recent months, and especially in the past few weeks, about what's been going on in Israel. And one of the terms that has come up, especially with previous guests that we've had, has been the term Jexodus. And it's something, I don't know if it's a thing or not, but thought we would have a great discussion today with the two gentlemen who are behind the Jewish Republican Alliance. They started it. We have Mitch Silberman and Bruce Karasik.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So first of all, what is the Jewish Republican Alliance?
Well, we're a nonprofit that began a little over 3 years ago. And it really, the impetus was that we felt like a minority within a minority, being a Jewish Republican in California. And when we found several, like, why are we so afraid to come out of the closet? We were afraid to speak up because of terrible things that were said to us. So kind of 18 of us got together in a restaurant, and we closed the door, and we went around the room, and we kvetched, or we complained, like, how much fun it was to be a Jewish Republican in California. And we actually just went around the table and shared stories, and it felt very cathartic. We felt like, wow, we're not alone. That's kind of nice. And Bruce, you want to do this again? Yeah, let's have it next month. And we did it next month. There was 30 people. Then there was 40. Then people started coming from as far south as Orange County and as far north as Santa Barbara. And I said, Bruce, I think we've tapped into something here, because it wasn't just us anymore. And apparently we weren't alone. There were a lot of people that felt like, I need to find my people. I need to be able to share my views and values because I feel very closeted.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So you started this small organization, and from what I understand, you guys are talking to DC now about expanding?
Yeah.
We are. They are talking to us, and this has always been our goal since we really got it going. We wanted to expand on a national level. It's a grassroots approach to Jewish conservatism, and we're going to be taking it into the battleground states, in many states throughout the country. And wherever we go, we're getting requests now from all over the country. It's kind of amazing. Ever since Dennis Prager spoke to us, and when he did, it was the largest gathering of a Jewish Republican event in American history. We had 1,200 people. And since then...
At a liberal temple.
At a liberal temple, one of the largest temples west of the Mississippi.
Yeah.
And ever since then, we've been getting calls and we've been getting emails. Can you form a chapter out here? Can you come here? So we're on the move. The Republican Party knows about us. And when people come to our events and to our meetings, it's like they feel like they have a home. They're so afraid to be able to speak out in their communities. People are afraid to wear Make America a Great hat again because they think they're going to be attacked, or they may lose their business or their job. And people get together and they're amongst their own kind, their own people, and they feel like, oh wow, I'm not a unicorn, I'm not a white elephant. There's a lot of people like me. And so when they come to the big events, they're on their feet and they're cheering and they're excited, and it's almost like a rock concert.
Yeah.
And I might want to add in that the goal is really to build community. Because from the very beginning, our three pillars have always been fellowship, you're not alone, education, we highlight conservative speakers and organizations that love America and love Israel, and finally networking. Just open your mind and maybe find out what other people do and share and become friends.
So the idea of a conservative Jew is something that you just don't hear about, maybe in the outliers today. Most Jews are liberal.
Yeah.
Okay, it historically always has been. Goes back to Kennedy, goes back to even further than that. And the idea today of a Jewish person standing up and wearing a MAGA hat for many people is a problem. Why do we have this dichotomy today in Judaism where there are so few conservative Jews?
I think it's a combination of things. I know because I've talked to so many of them. Many Jews say, you know why I'm a Democrat? Because my parents were a Democrat, my grandparents were Democrats, and we're just Democrats. So they haven't really thought it through, which is fine. Another reason is the media has been very effective at what I consider demonizing the Republican Party. So if you said to a fellow Jew, why aren't you a Republican? They would say, oh, I'm not a racist. I'm not a sexist. Republicans hate clean air and clear water. They're terrible people. I could never be a Republican. It's like, Wow. So the demonization has been very, very effective. And there's also the perception that the Democratic Party was helpful to the little guy, which may have been true many years ago, but not anymore. And in fact, when I meet fellow conservatives that are Christian, and they find out that I'm Jewish and I'm a Republican, it's the same thing happens every time, Dave. They lean forward, they whisper, they look both ways, they go, why are all Jews Democrats? Because they don't understand it. They're like, they love education, they're personally responsible, they're fiscally successful, they own businesses, they care about education. Like, why are, so it is a bit of a mystery, but it is changing. It is absolutely changing.
Well, the numbers that we're seeing right now, depending upon which poll you're looking at, is somewhere between 70, 72% maybe. Yeah. It may go as high as 80% of Jews consider themselves Democrats or liberals or left of center. Yeah. But do you think that, listen, this is a discussion I want to have with you, but after we saw 8 years of the Iran deal and we saw Obama basically supporting the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, we've seen this level of, I would say, animosity towards Bibi's cabinet in Israel over the past several years. Do you think anybody has woken up on the left?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I think there's a change coming, for sure. Unfortunately, what's important to us, Israel is really important to us. Standing up for Israel is really important to us. But when you talk to some Jews on the left, they'll say, well, Israel's not our only issue. It's not as important to us. But I want to echo what Mitch says. We're kind of now fighting a cultural war. Yeah. Because when my kids are in high school and when they've come through the school system, and when we talk to them, we hear what the teachers are saying. We read about what professors are saying. So you hear what's on the news media, what's in movies, what's on these award shows, and people they want to fit in, they want to be popular, they want to be accepted. But it's important when you educate them and you really have them hear the other side of the story, young people will get it. They do get it. And you mentioned the Jexodus movement. Things are changing, and we're trying to do that as well. We're trying to educate people in a way so they can hear the other side of the story, not in a confrontational way. Right. We always take the positive approach and the high road. And so for us, it's really a mission of love, and we really are enjoying it.
Yeah, and something I've noticed too, Dave, which has been very heartening, people will come up to me at our events afterwards and say, I really enjoyed this event. And I say, that's terrific. And then they'll say, and I'm a Democrat. And I say, really? So that's fantastic. So I publicly announce that if you are a Democrat, if you're Jewish, not Jewish, Catholic, Christian, Mormon, we love having you here. You are always welcome at a Jewish Republican Alliance event because we are not hating, we are not negative. We want to highlight what's good about America, what's good about Israel, and frankly, we want to stay positive. And the other part of the equation that's changing it, Dave, is the left now is getting so far extreme that many Jews are saying, wait a minute, I don't even recognize this party anymore. So it's not just the good that we're trying to do, but I think the other side is moving so far left that a lot of Jewish people and a lot of Democrats are saying, I don't understand what's going on in today's Democratic Party.
They certainly have moved to the left, and a lot of people, and I've heard this as well from people that do consider themselves left of center, the old adage of I didn't leave the Democratic Party, the Democratic Party is left.
That was Ronald Reagan's line. Yeah.
I was a Democrat a long time ago, but I was.
Yeah. So I want to talk a lot more about this as we get deeper into this and talk about the geopolitics of what's going on in the world, what we're seeing right now coming from the left as well. So we'll be right back after the break. We have Mitch and Bruce from the JRA, Jewish Republic. And by the way, where can folks find you? Where's the information?
The best way to find us is JewishRepublicanAlliance.org. That's our website.
Okay, perfect. We'll be right back after the break, folks. Dave Sussman here at America's Voice News. And Dave Sussman back with you at America's Voice News, and delighted to be here today with Mitch Silberman and Bruce Karasik, right? I want to make sure I'm saying the name.
Like Jurassic Park.
Karasik. Okay, great. And they are both with the Jewish Republican Alliance, an organization that they both, in fact, started themselves. So these guys are the guys. These are the men. And from what I understand, we briefly touched upon this at the beginning, but you're looking at expanding nationwide. So when I think of American Jewry, I think of Los Angeles, I think of parts of Chicago, I think of New York, maybe Miami, okay? What about other cities around the country here? Because when we talk about populations, they're relatively much smaller, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. Well, there are Jews throughout the country. Certain locations are so heavily Democrat that it may not be a good home for the Jewish Republican Alliance. But there are Jews throughout the country that really identify as conservatives, love America, love Israel. Whether they're Republicans or not, they are veering away from the Democratic Party. And also, listen, we're a nonprofit. We want to operate fully within what we're allowed to do. I joke now that Lois Lerner is not part of the IRS. We got approved for 501c3 status. But so we want to help in any way that we can. And so I know Bruce can talk to certain key states that we've identified as places to go that I think would be very receptive to having a home for Jewish Republicans.
Okay. All right. And I mean, you guys, again, we were talking briefly before, I think a couple weeks ago, and you were telling me that you guys got a call from D.C., from the administration. What was that?
We got a call from the people at the RNC, namely the head of Jewish outreach from the RNC, Michael Seller, and Jeff Balaban, who's a political consultant in D.C., and they heard about us. We had a couple of late night conversations, and they named about 10 states that they want to help us get into. All the battleground states, the close ones, for in the 2016 election that will probably be close again in the 2020 election.
Upper Midwest?
We're talking Florida, Pennsylvania, Ohio. They're interested in Minnesota, North Carolina, Arizona, Texas.
Both states are moving purple, Texas and Arizona. It's amazing.
I don't think that's going to happen. I think you read the news and you think that that's what the polls are saying. I talk to people in Texas. I don't think that's going to happen.
Cruz, just for statistics, Cruz won that election by 2.6%.
It was scary.
Over Beto.
But what has changed is Beto has now opened his mouth, so his polls are going to start dropping. So
what about Georgia? Because Georgia was very close as well. Stacey Abrams almost pulled that one off, 50,000 votes.
Yeah, we're interested in going all over the place, and what we need is we're looking for people to help us lead an organization and help us build it on a grassroots level in those cities. So we're putting calls out.
So you guys need people. You need outreach out there?
Right. So when we spoke to the guys at the RNC, and I was very touched by the fact that they said, in their view, they don't believe the RNC has ever done Jewish outreach before. Literally, made this a mission. So we had a conversation with the guy who's running Jewish outreach for the RNC, which I think is fantastic. He heard what we had to say. He asked us, what's the difference between us and other organizations? And he flat out said, listen, there are tons of Republican organizations out there. There's tons of Jewish organizations. He said no one on a nationwide basis is doing what you're doing. This is grassroots Jewish activism. People want to know they can make a difference. When I speak at large events, I have a little fun, and I say, raise your hand if you have ever yelled at the TV set or thrown down the newspaper in frustration. And they all raise their hands. And I said, well, that time is gone. We cannot sit idly by and watch this great country being destroyed. We must defend the Judeo-Christian values upon which this amazing country was founded. So people are looking for a way to channel their energy to get involved. And so we want them to know there's a place where, yes, we need leaders. We need people to step up and say, I want to become a chapter president. I want to expand the influence and make sure that people know they are not alone.
So what type of person would you guys be looking at to run a chapter or go and do outreach and do speaking engagements?
We're looking for someone who's an activist. Who has time to be able to spend. Maybe they have a business or maybe they're retired, but they have to have time to be able to help us. We're looking for an executive leadership team, volunteers. Our whole idea is a lot of people doing a little. So what we've done is we have a whole system that we've set up where there's a lot of different opportunities for people to get involved. And when people get involved in an organization like ours, they make friends, they do business with one another, it's social, it's networking, and we've made some of the closest friends and met some of the most amazing people by doing this. So it's really rewarding.
Yeah, one of the things that you mentioned Minnesota, for example. There are little pockets around the country where you do have a Jewish contingency of people. My concern is that when I take a look at certain blue cities, and most cities are blue today, they've been run by blue governance for decades. If you want to go into Georgia, you go to Atlanta, or if you go up to Minneapolis, or whatever it may be. And now you're starting to see somewhat of a move towards the ultra-left, the progressive ultra-left. And so if you go to Minnesota, you go to District 5, Ilhan Omar.
Yeah.
Okay, you go into Michigan, you see Rashid Tlaib. Yeah. So what are we seeing right now in the from our point of view, what are we seeing across the aisle as far as what is happening to the Democratic Party right now, where you have these voices that many people are considering completely anti-Semitic?
It is.
Absolutely.
Completely anti-Semitic, and the Democratic Party had an opportunity to speak up against anti-Semitism and refused to do it. And so we thought that said volumes of what they stand for. And now they're trying to get socialism to be mainstream for America. I mean, Ronald Reagan and most of the 20th century, we fought against communism and socialism. Freedom was what this country was founded on, Judeo-Christian values. And then trying to tell us that socialism is a better way of life will not fly with the American people. I truly believe the American people are watching. They know better, and they're not going to stand for it.
No, and I think that, someone said that President Trump did not cause the hatred from the left, he just revealed it. And what's happening is Nancy Pelosi is a very savvy woman politically. She is watching these upstarts that will not be reined in, and they are openly anti-Semitic. I would never have guessed in my lifetime to see anti-Semitism within the halls of Congress, and then the Democratic Party, where it's emanating from, refused to condemn it. I would never have predicted it. I was stunned. And so I don't know what's going to happen to that party, but the energy, the power, AOC, she is the Pied Piper of the Democratic Party today.
Yeah.
She is.
Well, the interesting thing is that you see with them that Nancy Pelosi is trying to marginalize them a little bit and also minimize them. She says it's only 5. There's 200 and something representatives in the caucus. So yeah, they know. Listen, whatever you think about Nancy Pelosi, she's not dumb.
No.
She's a tactile politician.
Oh yeah.
And she knows that the writing's on the wall. And November 2020, there's going to be this is the thing. Elections are won by individual votes now.
Yeah.
Okay, we come down to a point where you have certain districts around this country where literally a couple of hundred people, one way or another, and you would have a different makeup of the House.
Al Franken, they found 300 votes.
They found 300.
In a trunk, all for him, wouldn't you know?
Yeah.
We're kind of, to use a baseball analogy, we're kind of swinging the heavy bat by operating in Southern California and throughout California. If we can form and build a Jewish Republican organization in California, we could do it anywhere. I mean, when you think of California, it's a predominantly left-wing liberal state. Unfortunately, it's changed from the days of Ronald Reagan. Yeah, right. But there's a lot of us out there, and they're looking for a home. A lot of people, we're talking to Brandon Strzok, he with the Walkaway movement. He's going to be speaking. He's
been on the show a few times.
A great guy. He's going to be speaking to us as well. And I always say to him, they're walking away. They need a place to walk to. We want the Jewish Republican Alliance to be a place where they walk to. Yeah. And so we love what he's doing. Yeah, and the other thing, too, that I've noticed, I had mentioned before, Dave, that the number of people that come up to me and say, I really enjoyed this event and I'm a Democrat, I was also very heartened by how many people attend our events and join that are not Jewish. And we were thrilled because what matters is we share values. Mm-hmm. I actually had someone say, I'd love to come to your event, but I can't. And I said, well, why not? And he said, well, I'm not Jewish. I said, well, our name is the Jewish Republican Alliance, but we welcome anyone who shares our values. Okay? And so that's why we have so many people who are not Jews that love to come to our events because we're really amongst family. Yeah. Yeah, and I think when you use the word Republican today, listen, let's be honest. I know. The Republican brand is not once what it was, or what it once was. Yes. So I consider myself a conservative. I consider myself a more libertarian on certain issues. There's certain aspects of the Republican Party over the years that I think for a lot of Jews, and this has been, this is my personal perspective, has been a turnoff. Yes. And so how do you shape that from a branding standpoint? We thought about that really clearly and cautiously before we came up with our name. And we thought, if we said we were the Jewish conservatives, they would say, oh, so the Orthodox are not welcome, the Reform are not welcome. We are pretty convinced that although we don't agree with everything the Republican Party stands for, no one does.
Right.
It's the best home for us to have our brand attached to. There's no other place to go. Yeah. You start splintering off into other different places, we're going to lose. The reason why George Bush, the first one, lost, Ross Perot took a lot of his votes. They say that one of the reasons he lost is because he said, no more taxes, read my lips, no more taxes. Well, that's one reason.
I want to get into more of this, especially the history, going back to Bush and everything, and especially what we're seeing right now, not just in America, but also across Western Europe as well. So we're going to be right back after the break. We are talking about Republican Jews and conservative Jews. And I know that for many people on the left, that's an anathema, but we'll be right back with Mitch Silberman and Bruce Karasik. I'm Dave Sussman with America's Voice News. And welcome back. Dave Sussman here at America's Voice News. And we are talking Jewish Republican Alliance with Bruce and Mitch. And incredible week this week. And whether you guys are watching this next week or in 3 weeks from now, there is a trend that we're seeing right now regarding what is happening in Europe. Well, we just saw a massive fire at Notre Dame. And whatever the reason is, they immediately before the flames were out called it an accident. But there have been inarguably, there have been a huge number of attacks on churches all around France. There have been attacks on synagogues, which gets much less reporting as well. And a lot of people are starting to wonder, I see this, I was born and raised in London, England, came here in the 1970s. We see it in England as well. This mass migration from the Middle East and Northern Africa is changing the makeup of Europe. And we see this to a certain extent in the United States on a much smaller level. District 5 of Minnesota, for example, okay? So what we're seeing in the United States and this push towards the ultra left, and I call them extreme left. I don't call them extreme anymore. I don't think they are the face of the party, as you were just saying. But is this a worldwide phenomenon we're seeing right now?
Well, there's a concept called intersectionality, and you wonder how is it that the left seems to align itself with Muslims when the left says we love gays, for example. Muslims in Muslim countries throw them off buildings or outlaw it, but yet they're united in one thing. They hate the Jews. And it's very unfortunate. So a lot of the Jew hatred is coming out in Europe that's spilling over here. It's coming from what I'll call the Islamists, which maybe 95% of Muslims are wonderful people like you and me. Maybe it's 5%. But remember, the Nazis were probably 5 or 10%. And look what the trouble they caused. So most Muslims are just wonderful people like you and I. They, however, import their Jewish hatred that they've been taught. No one hates Jews on their own. They're taught to hate Jews. And then you have the left, which is rising so much in Europe and risen so much in the United States. That intersectionality all of a sudden makes it, sadly, a very dangerous situation for Jewish people.
One of the reasons that the United States has been so successful and so prosperous is being a Jew in America is different than being a Jew anywhere else in the world. Mm-hmm. And
how so?
Because Jews are free to worship here. Mm-hmm. Jews are free. They're Americans. They're Jews and Americans. They're not just those Jews. There's never been a country that has been better to the Jewish people than the American country, the USA. Mm-hmm. And I maintain that the reason that we are prosperous, the reason why the United States is so successful around the world, it's that it's support of the Jews.
Gotcha. So what we're seeing in America is that you have this push, and we refer to Ilhan Omar, mm-hmm. okay, Rashid Tlaib, and I think you mentioned that the Democrats are protecting their own. They wouldn't even come out and condone mm-hmm. some of these tweets that she has, which are clearly anti-Semitic, and I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. What is it that we're seeing from the left right now that isn't standing up, especially with leftist Jews? They are not standing up and condoning this.
Well, Bruce mentioned earlier, I learned a long time ago, I had a high school friend over for a Sabbath dinner on a Friday night. He was Jewish, he is Jewish, and this was during the Intifada, and he came out and said, yeah, Israel's really got to get their act together and knock it off. And I looked at him and I said, but you're Jewish. Like, it was my first introduction that someone who was Jewish would criticize Israel. Not that you can't criticize, but he clearly took the side of the violence that the Muslim population was causing in Israel.
Right.
And I said, what do you know? And now I'm realizing many Jews sadly have given up Judaism for leftism. So Israel is, for far too many Jews, is not even in their top 10 concerns. They have other concerns. So that's why they don't stand up when they hear these things, because they're like, well, to be honest, I kind of side with the Palestinians. I think there needs to be a two-state solution. I think that Israel is the oppressor and the Muslims are the oppressed. And so they're automatically not even siding with Israel. And that's what I'm seeing happening a lot, Dave.
You know, Alan Dershowitz is a liberal. He is someone that I truly admire. And although we may disagree on some politics, he's a big supporter of Israel. We have a lot in common with his views. And he tells a story about how Barack Obama came to him and said, I want your support, and I'll always have Israel's back. And on his way out, he said, what I didn't know is that Obama would be stabbing Israel in the back on the way out. The way he dealt with the settlements and abstaining in the UN, which is different than Nikki Haley saying, the days of UN bullying Israel are over. And that's a big change. And I think people are seeing that.
They're seeing the divergence. They're seeing President Trump. I even had a liberal friend who truly loves Israel. Even he admitted to me, begrudgingly, there has never been a more pro-Israel U.S. president than Donald Trump. Ever.
Well, you obviously, after decades of intransigence with, every president, both left and right, Republican and Democrats, were promising to move the embassy to Israel, to Jerusalem. They never did. The second Trump gets in, he just makes it happen. And so, again, coming back to a jury on the American left, you got some folks that are kind of begrudgingly saying, yeah, okay, he may support Israel, but this is a conversation that I've had with a lot of people. I think that a lot of people on the left in the United States, it's not that they so much have a problem with Israel, it's that they have been, I guess, brainwashed to a certain extent to believe that the problem is Bibi. It's a right-wing government in Israel. And because they are left of center themselves, they look at that as being bad for Israel. And you can actually talk out against Israel and not be anti-Semitic. And that's where the divide is in their mind.
There is, and I think it even that's such a great point. But there's another point, which is we in the United States have the luxury of voicing our opinions and not really being in danger. If Bibi and his so-called right-wing government got soft or easy or conciliatory, they have the chance of being wiped out like that. They are a tiny country the size of New Jersey that is surrounded by 1 billion plus people who have openly said, we want you dead. So Bibi and the government does not have the luxury of being soft on terrorism, being soft. They have to be vigilant or they will not survive.
The interesting statistic that just came out with the last election, where Bibi won, is that he got his majority support not from senior citizens, but from the 18 to 24 years.
Right. That is very
That's very encouraging.
Yeah, it is.
Very, right?
Very encouraging. And it's this whole thing now, it's also, there's a talk on the left that nationalism is bad, that standing up for your country is bad, that fighting for your country is bad. There are a lot of brave men and women in World War II and other times throughout our nation's history have stood up and paid the ultimate price to defend our nation. And now to say that that is not acceptable anymore does not sit right with me at all.
And it isn't just nationalism. When you say the word nationalism today, you have to say white nationalism.
Of course. How did white get into the? I mean, you have black athletes that love America, that want to be on the Olympic team. How did white get thrown into the mix?
Because it's branding. It's a narrative.
Yeah. And they're good at it.
That's all it is. It's all marketing. You know that.
They're very good at it, I must say, sadly.
Watching a show on Amazon called The Man in the High Castle. Actually, Mitch told me about this show. It's a fantasy, as if Germany and Japan won World War II. Right. And then they take over, and half of the country is now ruled by the Japanese, and the other half is ruled by the Germans. And what do? They take their guns away. They divide everybody by race. They prevent people from speaking up and speaking their mind. It sounds like a party that I know right now, and it certainly isn't the Republican Party.
What was it? Eric Swalwell, who is the newest, I think he's the presidential candidate, I think he's a congressman out of Northern California,
Yes.
and he came out and he said that we will be taking your assault rifles. We will be taking, and we're not coming in and taking them, but if you don't give them, you'll be fined and arrested and this and that. Anyway, you can't do that in this country and not come across, in my mind, as a stormtrooper in that way. How does that?
Especially since they're beating people up now in restaurants. Yeah. They're beating people up on the street. They're throwing drinks on them. They're threatening them. And now it's not just coming from the fringe. Yeah. Now you have politicians standing up. Maxine Waters saying, make them feel uncomfortable. They're not welcome in our community. You go on Breitbart.com and there's an amazing article they have about over 600 violent acts against conservatives in the last couple of years. And it's not made up. There's actually video links to each one of them. Yeah. So this sounds a lot like fascism to me.
I want to talk more about this in our last segment coming up here, and I want to get more into Israel as well. I know that the statistics are that it is that Jews are by far and away attacked more than any other demographic. It's not even close. It's a hockey stick trajectory when you take a look at the stats. So I want to get more into that in our last segment coming up here. We've got Bruce Karasik and Mitch Silberman, and we are talking Jewish Republican Alliance. Dave Sussman here with America's Voice News. We'll be right back. And welcome back, America's Voice News. Dave Sussman here. We are talking Jewish Republican Alliance. And the whole idea here today, we have Mitch and Bruce from the founders?
Yes.
We are the co-founders of the Jewish Republican Alliance.
Jewish Republican Alliance. And again, where can folks find the Jewish Republican Alliance online?
www.jewishrepublicanalliance.org.
Great. I want to talk a little bit more about Israel first before we get back into the JRA. And that is this. The idea of a two-state solution has been bandied about for decades, okay? And we had the Oslo Accords going back now 20 plus years, 25 years, I think it is now, and nothing has been done. Now, you see something along the lines of what is now being discussed. This hasn't made a lot of news, but Trump's administration is now talking about some type of a peace solution here today where they get Jordan involved. And if you want to go back into history, folks, the map of Jordan and Palestine, that's where that was. So we're talking about maybe placing Palestinians that want a Palestinian state of some type, maybe in Jordan. I don't know what that looks like. What are you hearing right now regarding a peaceful solution? Because is a two-state solution even possible now?
Here's my concern. So the Jews get moved out of the West Bank, whenever that was, and there were beautiful buildings and structures and greenhouses. What was done with it? They were destroyed. Why? The Jews built them. The Palestinians could have said, oh, look at these great things that we now have. Instead, they destroyed them because Jews built them. How do you have a two-state solution when there's one simple question? The Israelis could say to them, do we have a right to exist? And thus far, the answer has been no. If we don't have a right to exist, how can we exist side by side? If you just said to me, and you've said publicly, that we don't even have a right to exist. So the old adage, if the Palestinians put down their weapons, there'd be no more war. If the Israelis put down their weapons, there'd be no more Israel. That's the crux of it. However, if anyone can do this, it would be President Donald Trump. I wouldn't want to be on the other side of him on a negotiating table.
Well, he's also removed some aid to the Palestinians, over $200 million in aid. Yeah. Also gave control of the Golan Heights back to Israel. Along with the embassy. So there's a lot of things he's doing to try to get them to come to the table. But as Mitch said, I agree, unless they're willing to recognize that Israel exists and has the right to exist in peace, there will never be a two-state solution.
Yeah. And that, I think, is the crux of it, isn't it? That they don't believe that Israel has the right to even exist.
What's that phrase, Nakba, whatever they call the catastrophe? In 1948, what we call our Israel's independence, there's a term they have, and it's called the catastrophe or something like that.
Right, and they believe that there shouldn't be Jews in Jerusalem. Now, I've been to Jerusalem, been to Israel a few times, and if you go on the tour of the Western Wall, you can go into the excavation site. I was very lucky. I was connected with some people who were close to the Knesset there, and we went even deeper. So where the tourist goes, it's a few levels deep. It looks like Raiders of the Lost Ark with the scaffolding and this and that, right? There. And then there's actually an area where they are excavating below where they allow tourists, and we went down there. And as you know, you've been there, you could see the arches, which are the Muslim arches, on top of temple.
That's what they do,
right?
They
and it's like a 7-layer cake.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So every couple of centuries, you see this new arches over a temple, new arches over an older temple, and the bedrock, the foundation, is what?
Is probably a temple.
It's the first temple.
Yeah.
Okay? And so this isn't hyperbole. Right. This isn't politics. This isn't marketing. This is history. It's fact.
That's right.
Right? Yet nobody in Israel, at least from the Palestinian side, wants to admit this, or they have been uneducated. Now here's the issue, and this is my question for you. When you have Hamas, which is funded by Iran, which the last administration essentially funded with pallets of cash, okay, and the Iranian deal, okay, which basically kind of said, okay, we're going to stand back and trust you guys a little bit more. We'll have some kind of, maybe we'll come in and do some research, make sure that we come in and do some checks on you guys, but, it was completely hands off. What we're seeing right now is really interesting, okay? There is a shifting happening right now in the Middle East. The pieces are being moved where you now have new alliances because everybody is afraid of Iran.
Yeah.
Okay, the Sunnis are taking a look at what Iran wants to do. They don't want Iran to have the weapons. That's right. Okay, so you got Jordan, you've got Saudi Arabia. There's a lot of talk that's happening under the scenes right now that's going on, and it's not that they're coming out and outwardly saying I support Israel. No. Right? But they are more concerned about Iran than they are about Israel, which is a democracy where people are treated well. They're doing very well. They've got eBay, they've got Google, Amazon, right? So what do you think that this lends to a safer Middle East down the road here?
Well, we hope so. But that Iran deal, when you think about it, there was a poll in Israel. I think it was over 70% of Israelis said they were not in favor of that Iran deal. Now, we have this joke that we say, where there are two Jews, there's three opinions, right? So you can't get 70% of Jews to agree on anything. Yeah. They agreed that they didn't want that Iranian deal, and it was kind of shoved down their throat.
It was also premised on a lie. They admitted, I forgot the fellow's name in the Obama administration, he lied that they said, well, we're trying to sweeten the deal for the moderates. And afterwards he jokes, there were no moderates. We made that up. It was a lie.
Right.
Everything about the deal was a lie. The whole idea that all these things the Iranians were doing behind the scene were their secret projects and their secret testing of nuclear weapons, which they said they weren't doing. And then Bibi Netanyahu went on live television and showed all the charts and the secret photos and the surveillance of what they were doing.
And even John Kerry admitted, he said, yeah, I know some of the money we're giving them is going to wind up in terrorists' hands. The Secretary of State admitted it.
And Hamas, and listen, I've got no ill will towards the Palestinian people as a people. Right. If you've been to Israel, you know that the Arabs come in, they work, they want to take care of their families, and they, essentially they are under the hammer of Hamas, okay, which incentivizes the really hardcore down and outs to, here's $25,000 if you allow your child to come in and become a martyr and kill Israelis.
Arabs vote in Israel.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, so, and homosexuals vote.
That's right.
And women vote. And
There's
you go to any other
parades in Israel.
Yes, and it is the only. It really is a microcosm of the freedom that we see here in America, and it is the only. And as you talk about, it's a postage stamp size, right? So, okay, moving to the shifting sands that we see as far as alliances go. What does that look like if you're Hamas or Iran in the next few years?
Well, they're intransigent. They are not going to moderate their hatred for Israel. I don't know what can be done other than to win. Our side has got to win, where they realize that we can't win. Our hatred is not fueling enough new haters to try to destroy Israel. Israel has to remain strong, vigilant. They're an economic miracle, there's no doubt. They're a free democracy. I think young people, you alluded to that earlier, young people are going, wait a minute, I don't think Israel is as bad as I've been taught. As a matter of fact, we met a young lady probably in her mid-20s who's of Greek origin. She visited Israel for the first time, and she said she was actually angry. I said, why were you angry? She goes, I was told how terrible Israel was. I was there with my own eyes. I couldn't believe it. They're wonderful. It's a great country. They're modern. They're progressive. And she's like, I was so mad that I was lied to all my life about how bad they are. It was really amazing.
It's great over there.
When you come down, it also comes down, there's a lot of parallels, circling back to our conversation. The Palestinians educate people at a very young age to hate Jews, taking terrorists and making them into martyrs and heroes. What's going on in the American schools is they're teaching people to take on positions of the left, not hiring teachers that have alternative points of view. So you're raising a culture that believes a certain ideology. And that's the only way to fight that is with education and with strength.
Yeah.
And this is what you're both trying to do here in the United States. As far as the JRA goes, it's about conveying and really combating the message that we're seeing from the left. And it isn't just leftist politicians, it's the media, it's the schools, the institutions.
Everything. And sometimes the best thing we can do is be a shining example. So if you have a friend, a dear friend, and then they find out you're Republican and they say, but you're Republican? And then you can, if you're feeling bold enough, you can say, you've known me for years, Dave. Do you think I'm racist? Do you think I'm sexist? Do you think I'm a homophobe? And the cognitive dissonance of Dave's a great guy, but he's a Republican. But he's a great guy, but he's a Republican. Sometimes being a shining example and coming out of the closet, as it were, that you're a Jewish Republican.
Well, we see that right now. Jexodus is a movement. What you guys are doing, JRA and Jexodus, is the equivalent of what we were talking about earlier. We were talking about Blexit, right?
Yeah, Blexit.
And so you see that with Candace Owens and
Joy
the Black movement.
And there's a lot of black conservatives. And if you look at the polls now, support for Donald Trump and Republicans among black voters are at all-time highs now. If you look at what President Trump has accomplished in a little over 2 years, it's really unbelievable. If any other president had done what he had done, they'd have his picture, like they used to have Abraham Lincoln and George Washington in our schools. They'd have his picture on every wall. The economy is soaring. He is doing so much for our country, and we're respected internationally for the first time in a very long time.
Yeah, and not only that, on top of all that, that bastion of conservatism, Harvard, did a study that 90% of the reporting on President Trump is negative. Yeah. So he's here where he is now with all the things he's fought. And one of our great early speakers of the JRA was Susan Shelley. She's amazing, and she had this quote, which I love. And she said, President Trump's enemies are highly financed, very organized, and extremely motivated. And that's just the Republicans.
There's a lot of truth to that. We talked, we were talking briefly earlier. VDH, he's going back and forth with the guys at the Bulwark, which is that startup by Bill Kristol and company. And you have fifth columns in conservative politics as well. And it's frustrating. So, we see this 2.5 years, maybe even closer to 3 years of this whole idea that there was collusion with the Russians and all of this. And it's coming out now that there really wasn't. And they're now going to focus on obstruction. Well, how can you obstruct something that didn't happen to begin with? Okay, so they want to deflect, right? Squirrel.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, they want to deflect. Going back to what we were talking about before, what JRA is doing is that they're educating people about where the left stands today. And if you are a Jew, you are likely to have been raised in a relatively liberal or a democratic family. Okay, what is your message to them right now? For people that are waking up, they're seeing Rashid Tlaib, they're seeing Ilhan Omar, they're seeing this anti-Semitism that's worldwide, the fight against Trump, even though he's been an advocate for Israel. What do you say to people that are thinking to themselves, what's going on here?
Well, I want to acknowledge them for opening their eyes. It's so often we're just very myopic and we just say, may I ask how you consume your news? And if they say, well, I read the LA Times in the morning and I put on Yahoo when I get to work and I watch the CBS News at night. Well, no wonder you hate him. No wonder the biggest thing is educate yourself. Find other sources. Don't only read what you agree with. Mm-hmm. Okay, we are exposed to what they agree with every day. So when you come to a Jewish Republican Alliance event, yes, our 3 pillars: fellowship, you're not alone, education, great speakers, and networking. Come, have an open mind, but most importantly, maybe for the first time in your life, hold your nose and look at Fox, okay? If all you do is watch CNN or MSNBC, look at Fox, look at the Wall Street Journal, look at other sources, National Review Online, that maybe will challenge what you've been spoon-fed, that maybe what you've been told over these years is not only is it not true.
And not everybody at National Review is a supporter of this president either.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But be honest, and it's the old joke, a guy comes home, a wife comes home and finds her husband in bed with someone else, and he says, honey, who are you going to believe, me or your lying eyes, right? So open your eyes and see what's really going on with the economy, with Israel, with North and South Korea, with Iran, with regulations, with taxes. The list is immense. So kind of question what you're being spoon-fed and look for other sources.
That's what Brandon Strzok told me. He looked at what was going on in the history of what our American press has told him, what they've lied to him about. And if you look at the track record of the press, journalism has really declined. It's become a got you, I'm going to destroy you, I'm going to destroy your life. And if we allow a society where somebody runs for office and is well-intentioned and really does a good job, but we're concerned about whether he released his tax returns versus unemployment is at an all-time low, GDP is up, the economy is booming, the stock market is booming, people have money in their pockets, real estate is up. Why are you concerned with whether he released his tax returns? Why are you concerned with obstruction? It's about setting priorities. If everybody who runs for office is under such scrutiny that their lives are going to be ruined, we will never have good people to run for office, and that will damage our country.
And it's important to have a conversation. We make it a point to never attack those that are friends or that we love with, how could you be that way? How could you? That's what they do to us. We're not going to play that game. So what I often like to do, for example, if someone says, well, Trump's a liar, and I said, okay, so lying's important to you. Were you upset when Obama lied? Were you upset when Hillary lied? So you kind of put it back on them, not in an in-your-face way. Well, he cheated on his wife. Okay, so you were this upset when Bill Clinton cheated on his wife, correct? I love during the 2016 primary, we need a woman president. And I said, oh, so then you would vote for Carly Fiorina, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of make them think in a way that's makes them, I wouldn't say it's confrontational because I don't want to get in their face, but I want them to start questioning their own beliefs.
Again, folks can find you both where?
JewishRepublicanAlliance.org. That's our website. Okay. If you want to get involved, there's a place to do that. If you
That's what I was going to ask you
yes.
as we finish up here, because there's people around the country that are going to be watching this, and they may want to participate in some way, be in leadership in their local area. So what happens there?
There's a tab at the top of the website that says Contact Us. And there's a place you can send us a message. It comes right to us, and we'll get back to you.
Fantastic. I appreciate your time, both of you, and what you guys are doing. It's really important. So check these guys out. We got Bruce Karasik and Mitch Silberman here at the Jewish Republican Alliance. And, it's important work. It's important work. So continue doing what you're doing, and thank you both so much for the time.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. We'll be back again real soon with another episode here at Whiskey Politics on America's Voice News. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube as well. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. And new interviews coming out all the time. And you can also follow us on our Facebook page, Whiskey Politics Blog, and me at David Sussman on Twitter. We'll be back again real soon at Whiskey Politics. Cheers.